Alrighty, everybody, we are live. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. While we wait for everybody to come in, you know the routine. If you want to put where you're from, I'm always down to see where people are listening from. Most definitely so. I love all of you too. Appreciate all the love. Gonna retweet my live stream and then we'll get into it. Huntington Beach, New Orleans, Detroit. Lovely, lovely. I was so busy today. Germany, it's 4 a.m. Well, welcome in, welcome in. Vancouver, Idaho, Alabama. Love it, boys, love it. California. We have a little bit to talk about today. It's not going to be a super long live stream, I don't believe. We have a good amount of map updates, but I don't think there's much in the way of news. Let's see. Get some articles up here that I had saved. All right. 5 a.m. in Bulgaria, Macedonia. You guys are crazy. I don't know how you either wake up or stay up. I mean, I don't sleep, so I guess that's not that crazy, but it's wild. West Palm Beach, Florida. Just got off duty, now watching you. Awesome, man. New Zealand. All right, we got people from all over. Big ups from Bulgaria. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. We have, like I said, some pretty big map updates to talk about. The Russians are still moving very, very fast. And then we have a few articles that I wanted to talk about that have been posted on Twitter. So we're going to go over that, and then we'll just do the normal Q&A and everything, and then we'll get right on it. How do you make gains without sleep? I do sleep. I just sleep like a cat, kind of. Like I sleep 16 hours a day. I just do it in 20-minute spans. And Miami. All right. All right, everybody. Let's go ahead and get into the map update, shall we? Okay. Zooming out here. As you can see from the map, most of the updates are going to be taking place down here in the south. Let me do this. There we go. Most of the map updates are going to be taking place down here in the south, Velyka Novosilka area, over here near Kharkov, and then up here just to the south of Pokrovsk. We do have some other updates that I'm going to talk about, but the primary Russian focus right now is this southern Donetsk area, and you can see where the border is right here. You can follow it. It goes up. It follows the Vovocha River right here, all the way over here, and then comes up behind Pokrovsk, behind Slavyansk and Kramatorsk over here. So this right here is the general area, the goal of the Russian offensive. There are no more strong fortifications in this area, and the defense is getting much more difficult for the Ukrainians, just in terms of logistics. Not having well-established staging areas in big cities like Pokrovsk up to the north. You don't enjoy any comfortability with rotation. There's just no ease of there's no quality of life for the Ukrainian troops now in the south. So things are getting much worse. And as the lines continue to degrade, the Ukrainians once again are finding themselves deep in hot pockets, as we've talked about multiple times. The Ukrainians love to sit in these pockets, and I have a hard time at this point. I have a hard time figuring out what exactly is going on with the Ukrainian strategy here, trying to figure out what their goal is. Again, it seems to me that they're just still trying to hold on to everything, which at this point, it's getting to the time where it's like, if you hold on to everything, you're going to hold on to nothing. That's sort of where we're at. there's a lot of pressure, political pressure right now on the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian regime, Zelensky, to begin drafting 18 to 25-year-olds. Zelensky has long refused this, but the way it's sounding is that the West's aid, how much the aid the West is going to send, is going to be determined by how many people the Ukrainian army, how many people the Ukrainian army can replenish. If the Ukrainian government can produce people, the West it's sounding like they're going to be more willing to send aid. And basically, it seems like a strong arm situation to get the Ukrainians to mobilize that demographic that they have been desperately trying to avoid mobilizing this entire war. The mobilization of that demographic will be basically the demographical collapse of Ukraine. That's their future. It is already like the smallest portion of the population, so it's not even that strong. A good amount of it has already left the country, just fled, and so this remaining group is, if this goes through, that will be the absolute death of Ukraine. There will be no Ukraine left economically after that point, unless somehow they're able to, get a very good deal and establish themselves, and then there's a huge influx of immigration and everybody returns home. And I just don't see that happening. I don't see that as being realistic. And I am now under the impression that we will see the mobilization age drop here in just a minute. Fix one of my lights. Okay. All right. Yeah, the 18-year-olds are the future of the country, but not in war. Nope. No, I hope they don't either. I hope that this war comes to an end, because this should be the conclusion of it. But I just don't think so. See, I think that we're on a kind of a roller coaster now. We're like stuck on the tracks, and we're heading towards just an escalatory global situation. So I don't see how Ukraine could ever possibly end right now. And if they want the war to continue, they're going to have to draft this group. So I'm expecting it in the coming, probably the coming weeks. I think they're going to announce it. Let's see. Kalibrated. Is it not true that it wouldn't cost Ukraine their whole demographic? They need only 30,000 youths to replenish. I don't know what you mean. That 30,000 a month is what they need. The Russians are recruiting 30,000 men a month, and that's making that's like the influx that you need, because it's different for the Ukrainian military. People don't really get out of the Ukrainian military. In the Russian military, their contracts end. They're not in service anymore. So the 30,000 number is sort of the number that they have to maintain and keep that going. And they need a lot more than 30,000. They wouldn't just need to draft 30,000 young men. They would need to draft. You don't mobilize 30,000 people. It's not enough. It would be 100, 200,000, 300,000. That's really what you need. That's what a big training program needs. That would be what you're looking for. You're probably looking for something closer to 500,000 from that entire demographic group. After 18-year-old men, the women will be next. Equality. Yeah, I doubt it. I think that's usually the point where that ends. It's hard to get women to go to the front. I mean, there's nothing you're fighting for at that point. It's I don't think it's super realistic, but yeah, I get what you're saying. All right, let's move on. Okay. So we'll start up here. No advances that were noted in the Kupiansk area. Nothing down this way so far. Again, nothing in the Seversk area. There might be advances here. We're just not getting them mapped. No geolocation, stuff like that. So very quiet along this entire front. Lots of fighting going on, I suspect, but just not a ton of progress from any side. Again, same down here in Seversk and Chasiv Yar. It is now openly stated by Ukrainian sources that the Russians have entered the refractory plant here. So my update was correct about a week ago. I think I made this. The situation is probably progressed further than that, but now the Ukrainian sources are admitting it. All right, moving down here into Toretsk, we can see that the Russians have advanced. There was a geolocation of Russian forces in this area right here. So this Terrakon has been captured. It is also being reported that the Russians have captured most of this industrial area. However, I have not seen a geolocation for that yet, so I'm just going to wait. But it is very likely that most of this high ground right here is under Russian control. And as I said, that'll bring the Battle of Toretsk to its conclusion here shortly. All right, moving over to the Pokrovsk front, we have just a small update here, nothing major, just an advance to the trees, to getting closer to the south of Minhorod. This next leap into Minhorod will kick off the battle. It does look like the Russian forces have begun moving again in the southern, right south of Pokrovsk here. It does look like there's some sort of activation now. So we're actually seeing the Russians push. This is the first time we've seen this in a little bit. This front has been more or less stable for a while the Russians were working on Ugledar and Kharkove. That's coming to its conclusion. The Ukrainians are pulling out of that area. Now the focus is moving back up to Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk is now going to become the new Kharkove in this area. Just when you're looking at the map here, Ugledar used to be the linchpin, right, of this defensive network. Once that was lost, all of this collapsed, and the Russians are now pushing into Kharkove, which is the new Ugledar at the current time. And then once this collapses, maybe Andreevka becomes Ugledar, but it's just not a real town, basically. It's just houses. So probably not. More than likely, this entire southern area right here, this entire pocket around Andreevka is going to experience just too much pressure, and the whole area is going to kind of collapse. And this is what we're talking about. There's nothing over here to defend. So the Russians are going to be able to move quickly through these fields, utilizing air power, and Ukrainians lacking serious defensive fortifications and logistics. It's going to make the defense of this area very hard. Like I said, the question has always been and is always going to be, until we see it happen, do the Russians, once they capture Andreevka and Constantinople, will they push for the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast and actually cross into that, which would mean that they're likely going to try to capture most of it and push for the river. So this is a big if that we'll see coming. My prediction here is that the Russians are probably going to complete the capture of their 4 oblasts eventually. At that point, a deal will probably be offered, might not be accepted, then the war might continue. I just have a feeling that that's the way that this is going to go, but we'll see. All right, so to the south of Pokrovsk here, we have a general Russian advance through these fields here and along the E50. Again, just beginning to put pressure on the southern flank of Pokrovsk. This is going to further complicate just the defense out right in front. So like the frontal defense is now being compromised by this advance to the south and to the west. As the battle begins to focus more around Pokrovsk, the resources are going to have to be driven to Pokrovsk to defend it. And that means that, again, this area is going to experience an even further lack of resources, even as Kursk is still going on and everything like that. So defending everything, basically, at the end of the day, means you're defending nothing. That's sort of the situation. All right, and then here to the south of Pokrovsk again, the Russian forces have advanced into Novopushkinka and into Shevchenko right here to the south. So basically, almost into the urban, I would almost say into Pokrovsk, basically, like this is just a town that's almost connected directly to the city itself. So they're on the outer edges, but the battle for the city is likely about to begin. And if you really look at it, it's not super big. It's kind of dense. There are some high rise buildings, but in terms of defense, it's not going to be incredibly easy to defend. Like some of the other places we've seen. Again, not a ton of fortifications in the city that we know about, with visual evidence. So I can only go off of sort of what I've seen mapped, and that would show to me that this area, once the Russians actually get into the city, is going to be rather easy for them to take, compared to Toretsk or even Kirkove down here. All right. Okay, down here, Russian forces have entered Stary Turny and completely captured it, which means that they are now less than a kilometer, I believe, from the main road. No, 2 kilometers. But this is a valley, so they can just look across this. Anybody trying to evacuate out of the industrial facility here, or potentially this the eastern or the western part of Kharkov, will have to go along this Prospekt-Zaporitsky highway right here through Deshane, and then that is being watched by the Russians. So now Kharkov is in a tactical encirclement, but more generally, this entire pocket is basically in a tactical encirclement. Transport through this road is going to be difficult for the Ukrainians. You can see that they're almost out of road access. They can kind of follow these fields here and move along like this and come up here. But there's not a significant roadway for them to utilize. Look, it says that this is a road right here. It goes right through the middle of the field. I don't know. Ukraine is a crazy place. Okay, so down in this pocket, just to the north of Hanivka, Russian forces are just continuously closing this. These fortifications are now in the gray zone. It is likely that most of this pocket has been evacuated of Ukrainians, and the Russians will just take their time clearing it and pushing through and capturing it, which will put the end to the pocket south of Kharkov, leveling out the front, and then pressure on the industrial area will begin. The final capture of Kharkov will complete, and then the Ukrainians will have to step back to the line that I drew a while ago, back here, back around this green line. You can see that already up here, it's already beginning to be compromised, and there is just no real defensive area back here. So maybe not exactly on the green line, but they have to get back behind this road practically and into Andrivka. So expect this, at least this pocket from here to here, to close in the next couple of weeks, most likely. Okay. All right, over to the west slightly, Russian forces have basically pushed the Ukrainians back behind the Sukiali River right here, and have entered Sukiali itself, as well as Hehanta and Konstantinopoliski. So Russian forces, again, are just really pushing this entire front. The pressure is growing, and the second that this breaks, the second that this area folds, Russian forces will be unbound, basically, by this urban battle, and will begin to very forcibly push into Andrivka area and back over here. Again, once the Russians get back to Andrivka onto these roads, the progress is going to become faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. So get ready, especially into these deep winter months. It's funny how this guy thinks he understands combat based off of a map. I don't think I understand combat based off of a map. I think that I've been watching this war for 2.5 years and reporting on it consistently. I think that I've been consistently right over the last year. My predictions have been almost spot on, and I'm about to talk about that in just a second, Jeff. So no, it's not that I think that I understand combat because I've been mapping. No, I understand what's happening in Ukraine because not only do I map it, but I also geolocate it. I follow it very closely. I have a very, very solid understanding of this conflict. And if you want to prove me wrong, you are more than welcome to create your own YouTube channel and actually do something instead of just talking in my chat. Have a good day. All right. Over here, Velyka Novosilka. Remember, guys, I talked about it. I made the prediction video. You can go back and watch it. I think it was August or September time. I talked about these Crossroad villages, and that's the title of today's episode. And we are now at the point where the first of the 3 Crossroad villages that I had predicted were going to be the focus of the muddy season / winter campaign is now coming into focus for everybody. And we can see here that the encirclement of Velyka Novosilka is underway. As we've seen, I've pointed it out before, but the Ukrainian forces only have a number of lines of communication into Velyka Novosilka. The one from the north through Novi Komar has been cut. It has been cut by fire for a while. It is now physically cut. There were reports that the Ukrainians may have been counterattacking in this area. Deep State said something about it. And there was an ungeolocated flag that may have been planted in this area. So this right here, until I get information otherwise, I'm going to stick with the geolocation that I have of Russian forces in Novi Komar. But this might be pushed back because as I'm about to mention, the capture of this village means that the Velyka Novosilka is in a tactical encirclement. We can see here that the only remaining open line of communications either comes from Novosilka here, up from what is the closest town? Oh man, I guess you would say Papasnaya. Papasnaya right here would be the closest logistics town to run goods, supplies, manpower, rotation, whatever you need, down this road, and then along this highway into Velyka Novosilka. This is now under FPV coverage and artillery mortar fire coverage. There are also likely Russian DRGs operating in this area. If you look at Deep State almost has the gray zone going up to the road. So it does appear as though the tactical encirclement of Velyka Novosilka has begun, especially on this side of the river. It is definitely in a tactical encirclement, right? There is no logistics coming in from the north now. It can only come in from the west, and on the west, it is being harassed tremendously. So we see this advance to the south here. Russian forces have entered Blahodadne and have finished the capture of Makarivka over here. That basically undoes the total of the Ukrainian 2023 counteroffensive. It's basically completely gone. I think this little area right here is the last little bit of the 2023 counteroffensive that has yet to be undone. But yeah, so the Russian advance here along the Moryki Yali River is expected. This area is hard for the Ukrainians to defend. If I were the Ukrainians, I would just pull back behind the river, but they don't want to lose the town without a fight because, again, there's this giving the Russians access to all of these roads in this crossroad village is going to mean further problems down the road for not only Holyai-Polye, but also for Andrivka to the north, putting pressure on this entire open space back here. So Velyka Novosilka is in a tactical encirclement, and the Russians are applying a ton of pressure to this area right now. Next should be Holyai-Polye or potentially Orikhiv, where the Russians have had success to the south of Malatakmak, right in this area. Okay, guys. I think that is it for my map updates. Nicely done. We made it. Hopefully everybody's doing good. If you guys have some questions, that's all my map updates. If there's any particular topics you want to talk about, it's kind of been a little slow in the Ukraine news. So It's just a lot of talk right now. It seems very because fuck Jeff. Yeah, definitely. Tyler, I agree. Jeff, it's funny when people come in and just say they don't know me, they don't like what I say, they hear something that doesn't confirm their bias, so then they instantly, I've been dealing with it for 2.5 years. And it's very interesting because a lot of people will call me like super pro-Russian, and that's just because the entire time I haven't been pro-Ukrainian, and people on the pro-Ukrainian side literally cannot stand that. If you talk bad about the Ukrainian information space or the Ukrainian government, I mean, you used to not be able to say anything bad about Zelensky. Even if you were fully pro-Ukrainian, I mean, you look at people like AMK Mapping. There's also this guy named Joe on Twitter. There's I call them the misfits. It's all of the people who actually have a realistic perspective on what's going on in Ukraine and in the area, instead of a completely fictional fantasy made up sort of, good versus evil, a million Russians are dying sort of like perspective on the war. And you watch, and I've watched the pro-Ukrainian information space literally cannibalize themselves and destroy themselves when people go against that narrative. It's an ideology like any other, where you can't go against the stream. If you do, you just get forced out and discredited and tossed away. And they find their way into my chat, and then they say stupid things, and usually they're the most uneducated, incompetent human beings you will ever talk to in your entire life. But they've managed to waste our time here today talking about it. So, mission accomplished, I guess. But I have fun talking about people who are clinically stupid and feel the need to express that stupidity very loud on a platform because they have anonymity and they never actually have to defend it. So, thank you, Tyler. Welcome in, everybody. Let's see. 2025 war predictions. I am going to make a video about this soon. But my 2024 war prediction right now is that this area right here is going to be the primary focus of January, February up into Pokrovsk. Like I've said, capturing this is going to be like a southern Izum. It's going to open up the door to push in, capture Toretsk, put a lot of pressure on Konstantinivka, put a lot of pressure on Druskivka. And then as the Ukrainians have to come from the north down to put out this massive fire that's just growing by the day. I mean, guys, look at how much territory we're talking about here. 7 square miles, 1.35 square miles, 5.17 square miles, 3.9 or 3.19, 3.8. You're talking, since my last update, another maybe 60, 70, 80 square kilometers captured. And this has been a slow week. This has been very, very slow for updates. So the Russians are moving incredibly fast. If you look at last month's numbers, I'm not on the map. LOL. Classic Aiden move. It's on my stage. Sorry. So in this Pokrovsk area, my bad, guys, this southern Donetsk area here that I talked about, capturing this, and then it is the southern Izum. So here's Izum up here. It is the exact same, gives them access back behind Konstantinivka, Toretsk, Druskivka, pressure on Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. And like I said, as they come down from the north of the Donbass to defend this giant flank that's opening up to the south after Pokrovsk is taken, the manpower issues, the ammunition issues, they should all just cascade into a unstoppable collapse, I guess you would say, that will compromise this entire eastern flank. And the Ukrainians know that's coming. They're desperately trying to prevent it. They're talking about negotiations now, ceasefire where the lines are, all that sort of stuff. I don't think that's going to happen. So 2025, I think, is going to be a majority here. and a majority of pushing through this southern Zaporozhye area, right? I don't know if they're actually going to go for the city itself. I think we will begin to see Kherson being recaptured by the Russians. I believe we're going to see a crossing somewhere around Novokhovka potentially, and then potentially down here in this island area. Not a major crossing, almost like a reverse Krinky, but with available manpower and artillery advantage and aviation advantage and drone advantage and everything. So an actual productive Krinky instead of just a waste of manpower with a failed counteroffensive going on. I believe we will see that in 2025. Did my camera go off again? Bro, what is going on? All right. So I believe we're going to see the beginning of the operations into there. Because, guys, remember, the minimum Russian goal now is the full recapture of the Kherson Oblast, the full capture of the Zaporozhye Oblast, the full capture of the DPR and the LPR, which the LPR is almost fully captured. There's just this little bit right here and this little bit right here. So I think you're going to really see a focus just on those 4 areas, potentially a little bit in the Kharkov region, but I would not expect, again, another. Don't be looking for big offensives. The Russians are going to manipulate the battlefield. They're going to pull the Ukrainians. They're going to stretch them, and you're already seeing how the Ukrainians can't handle that. Right, they're being bent past their breaking point. So it's only going to progress. The Russians are only going to start bending and molding and flexing harder, and then eventually it'll all just collapse. And then you will see the big arrows and the advances. There's no point in advancing when you have an army in front of you that's going to do unnecessary damage to you. Good question. Scott's brain is a mapping supercomputer with predictive intelligence and Cyrillic geographic naming decoding technology in Russian and Ukrainian. Yeah, I fucking wish, bro. Maybe I could pronounce some of these goddamn names right. No, I am just a monkey pressing buttons over here. And what you're actually witnessing is the what is it? It's like infinite chimpanzees on typewriters. One of them is going to word for word recreate Shakespeare, right? That's what you're seeing right here. This is just the Shakespeare monkey moment where I'm doing everything right, but it's random. And I have no idea why I'm doing it right. It's pretty impressive. Calibrated. Imagine the hysterical seething if the Russian flag goes back up over Kherson. Do we get the spam? Do we get to spam the 22 prediction screen cap? Bro, it is literally the single thing that I need to happen to be fully redeemed in this entire arc. This is the full redemption arc from that travesty of a post. And the funniest part about that post is, I'm not super pro-Russian. The only reason I did that was because the pro-Ukrainians were so gleeful about not doing anything in the counteroffensive in Kherson when they were just stuck in this gut right here for forever. They were just getting destroyed there. And you just saw videos of armored columns getting ruined for weeks and weeks and weeks. Then Kharkov happened and the mess happened, and then the Russians announced their withdrawal. But before then, I made a very stupid and trolly tweet about the Russian flag not ever being taken down over Kherson. And then 3 months later, the Ukrainians walked in. So sweet. Thanks for that. So yeah, that's my redemption arc right there. That's like the one horrible, terrible prediction I've made. And if it reverses, it will be the ultimate, redemption arc. So. My prediction, big Russian offensive coming soon. There's a lot of people talking about it. I saw a comment by McGregor. He was talking about it. But sometimes I think those guys are a little pie in the sky with their narratives. I think that the Russians have very clearly shown what their goals are, what their objectives are, and how they're planning to achieve those objectives. And primarily, I think you're going to see a continuation of what you have seen, because it's working for the Russians, right? They have to keep the war going for their economy. They have to. They don't want to sacrifice human lives unnecessarily. And there's always the argument that maybe by going slower, they are putting more lives at risk, whatever. You can make those arguments, but you don't know. And if you do commit to something massive, you could have some serious setbacks, and it's just not productive when you have a firepower advantage, a logistics advantage, an economic advantage over Ukraine, a manpower advantage over you. You have every advantage. Why 3-2-2 right now? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Yep, follow the topography. Always follow the topography. Donbass has trillions worth of minerals, and that is another motivation for the West of starting a war. Yeah, there's a number of motivations. All of the LNG that's in, or all of the gas that's in Ukraine is part of it. But I think the bigger aspect of Ukraine, that's the spoils of the war, I guess you would say. That's to the victor goes the spoils, but more specifically, if Ukraine was completely irradiated and you couldn't mine anything and it didn't matter, the West wouldn't care. It would still have achieved its objective. Not necessarily. The objective really was regime change in Russia and pulling Russia away from China. 1991ing the Russian economy again, basically subjugating them, and then economically subjugating them, and then moving on and focusing on the real pure adversary in China. So I think that was the majority of it. And then on the back end, yeah, if you can get trillions of dollars of minerals and oil, I'm sure BlackRock would love that. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them up. I'll answer some questions. And then, yeah, like I said, I'm done. So I'm good to just talk a little bit, chill out. Instead of mobilizing 18 to 25-year-olds, Ukraine could move to the west side of the Dnieper River. That would buy them all the time. Yeah, but that's a Russian victory, right? That is a Russian victory right there. If they retreat, the war has been lost. Basically at that point. So, yeah, they could do that, and it would be from a battlefield perspective, it would be probably the smart thing to do, because it would be hard for the Russians to cross at that point. However, politically, they wouldn't survive it. What's the next big escalation? I don't know. It seems that the Western strike systems being used on Russian territory have stopped. I don't know. We haven't seen one for about 9 days now. Not an ATACMS or a Storm Shadow strike. We saw like 3 that didn't really do much, and that was it. Since the Russian retaliation with the medium-range ballistic missile, we haven't heard anything. So maybe they got the message and they actually listened. Maybe they didn't have that many munitions in the first place, which was one of my arguments for the green light being given, was that it really made Biden look weak, because it was too late to actually do anything. There's not enough munitions. So it was kind of like the safest baby escalation. And that's why I specifically said, don't expect anything to change, guys. This is not really that much of an escalation, because there's no significant damage that can be done with these weapons in the amount of time that they have to do the damage. It's not there. So the numbers just weren't adding up. The next big escalation, though, it would have to be, the next thing would have to be either JASM being delivered, which I don't think that's going to happen. But I said that in the past. I don't doubt that it could happen, but I don't think that weapon system is necessarily on the docket to be sent. And I don't think you're going to see Taurus missiles. So I don't know what the next escalation would be. They're talking about potentially boots on the ground. I think the next escalate. I don't think Ukraine is really the area where you're going to see the escalation anymore. We've seen the escalation in Ukraine for 2 years now. Ukraine is kind of coming to a culmination, I would say, a little bit. Not that it's over by any means, but just there's not much else to do. There's not an army to go on the offensive. There's no new weapons to give. There's no new real escalation to provide. But you'll see it in places like Syria and in Iran and North Korea and wherever, South China Sea. You'll start to see the pressure get put on, especially the economic pressure. So I think that's more what you need to look for in terms of escalation. The West is putting a pretty big push on in terms of the economic pressure right now. I think they're trying to force something. Biden is trying to force something before the Trump administration comes in. When do you expect the Ukrainian collapse? I think the Ukrainians are already in their collapse. I think that what you're seeing right now is the collapse. It's just not happening in the way that you would think about it in like a movie. When the Germans were collapsing in the East, the military situation was so deplorable. The training was terrible. They had Volkssturm, when they were starting to get back into like Austria and Germany, and not necessarily in Berlin yet, but in that area, the Russians were collapsing since Kursk, right? There was never a position for them to regain the initiative. They were never going to begin winning. They were getting pushed from two sides. The war was going horribly. That's a collapse. They were collapsing for over a year. It's just the size and territory and the cost in lives is so tremendous that it doesn't collapse like sort of like kind of like maybe what we saw in Syria a couple days ago, where Aleppo is just like captured. Like you're not gonna see that right now until the collapse becomes entirely visible. Like there's no means of preventing at least the outward appearance of a collapse, because right now they are collapsing. They can't hold a lot of areas like we're talking about. Like they're losing not only Velyka Novosilka, but they're also currently losing this entire area, as well as Kharkov, which is a very defensible position. The Russians are advancing south of Pokrovsk. The Russians are advancing in Toretsk. The Russians are advancing in Chasiv Yar. The Russians are advancing in the Kupiansk area, in the Oskal River region area, in the Terny Yumpelivka area down here. And they are continuing to advance in the Kursk area. So, the Ukrainians just don't have the means anywhere to hold anything, but the Ukrainian mentality right now is to not give up an inch. So while you're not seeing the collapse visually like you should be, if they were treating it like a proper military campaign and doing everything, like if you're playing Hearts of Iron 4 or whatever, and you're trying to win militarily and you're not worried about political bullshit, there's no corruption, the Ukrainians would be doing much different things. They would be pulling back and retreating in areas and getting out of pockets and setting up new defense lines and investing in this and investing in that. But that's just not the situation at hand, right? That's not the reality on the ground. And the Ukrainian objective is to hold everything. So the collapse is going to come all at once, right? It's not going to be this like slow back up. You're going to see the Ukrainians hold, and then one day it's just not going to hold, and then it's just all going to collapse and it's all going to fall back if the Russians pursue that sort of Ukrainian collapse in that way. There is costs that come with that too for the Russians as well. Thanks, broski. I appreciate the 10 p.m. live streams. Slava Rossiya, Slava America. Yeah, I like these late streams too. I think they're fun. My brain is a little bit more on at this time too. I've been up all day, so it feels good. Feels good. Thank you for being in here, Iranian Putin. Raphael, while France does not have a government, if I were Putin, I will take the EU Parliament and France out. Bro, you're crazy. You're wanting all the crazy shit to happen. Yeah. I mean, even when the French do have a government, what does it even mean? It's going to be interesting to see what happens to Europe here because they are in the shitter, and it is. They're in a very, very bad situation, and being dependent on Western LNG in Europe is just abysmal for the economies. You're going to see, I think you're going to see a lot of upheaval in the EU over the next couple of, probably the next decade. Thank you guys for your questions. Yeah, no problem. Thank you for your questions, everybody. I appreciate them. What's going on in South Korea? Good question. It was kind of a nothing burger. The South Korean president is about to get impeached, I believe, and what he decided to do was declare martial law. The military came out like they were supposed to because martial law was declared. But to me, it looked like the special forces was basically not really there at all in spirit. They were just there because it was their job to be there. It looked like they mostly had training magazines or no magazines in their guns. It wasn't really a very real situation, I don't think. The parliament came out and voted 190-0, so he had absolutely no support at all. And then he quickly canceled the martial law, the coup attempt. I don't even know what to call it, and apologized. So political suicide for nothing, I guess. But his political career was probably over anyway. And then the protests in Georgia as well. Yeah, failed coup attempt, but he's kind of the president already, so he was trying to more like disband the parliament, but it didn't end up working at all. So yeah. And then in Georgia, somebody talked about the protests in Georgia, the country. Yeah, the protests in Atlanta, they're fucking crazy right now. No, the protests in Georgia are what I've talked about. I've talked about this, and this was one of my predictions actually quite a while ago. The Ukrainization of Georgia. Again, this is another escalation point, right? So don't look at Ukraine so much for escalation. The missiles might have been like the last real escalation you might see out of Ukraine. Really, the Georgia situation is much more on edge for me personally, just because it looks like they're trying to do another Maidan. The Georgian government is trying to get rid of Western influence and Western money in their political sphere, and the U.S. obviously doesn't like that. So the Georgian protests are something that I would watch much more carefully. But up to this point, they seem pretty tame. I mean, we're seeing some fireworks and stuff like that, but Georgia's a lot smaller, so it's a little bit different than Ukraine, I think. All right. If you guys have some more questions, get them in. And then maybe we'll do like 5 more minutes and then wrap it up. Can I talk about the situation in Syria? Yes, I can. The reason why I haven't been talking about the situation in Syria a whole lot is because it's pretty unknown right now. A lot of Syria is just kind of desert. And so when you're looking at a map, control areas are not super available, like to look at, I guess, if that makes sense. Like in Ukraine, you always know where the front line is because there's a lot more geolocations and information like that. But right now, the HTS, Islamic extremists, the rebels, if you will, have captured Aleppo and are trying to advance on Hama down here. And then if that happens, it opens the road to Homs as well as Latakia over here, if I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, sorry. Where the Russian naval base is. So this is an area that cannot fall for the Russians, and you don't, and the SAA does not want to lose Hama or Homs, and we've seen this a lot in the past. I think there's been 9 offensives on Hama, Hama, yeah, in total, and it's gonna. I don't think that they're going to be able to capture it. I think that they're going to be able to hold it. And right now, what you're seeing is a bunch of the Arabic states have backed Bashar al-Assad, which is not a very good sign for regime change in the region. Usually, regime change comes when nobody wants that individual there, but Bashar al-Assad represents stability in the region, right? Russia is stability. Russia can be trusted. Assad can be trusted in terms of what they're going to do. You know, the West comes in and they say they're going to do something, and then when it doesn't suit them anymore, they change their mind, they lie, they backstab, they do whatever. It's what we do. Look at the Kurds. The Kurds are, again, getting screwed over in Syria, but that's just because that's how it works, right? If you're a U.S. proxy like Ukraine, you get the shit end of the stick. It's how it always goes. The ANA, same thing. The South Vietnam, same thing. So yeah. But in terms of the situation, it's beginning to stabilize a little bit. There's still a lot of fighting going on. A lot can happen. It looks like they are potentially trying to surround the city. But you know, I just would never bet against the side with, geostrategic, like existential geostrategic interests in the region, right? If the U.S. was to leave Syria, yeah, their geostrategic presence would be reduced and it might affect them, but it's not the end of the world. If Russia loses its warm water port in the Mediterranean, on the coast of Syria, that's going to be a very detrimental thing to Russia's geostrategic position, right? So they're going to invest a ton more in Syria to prevent that from happening. Do you think the SAA can hold Hama? Yeah, I just talked about that. Hopefully that answers your question. UAE and Iran have the money and power to prop up Syria. They are both all in on Syria right now. We'll see. Iran definitely. The problem is that you just have so many warring parties. You have ISIS, you have Al-Nusra, HTS, the Al Qaeda, and former ISIS up in the north. You have the SAA, which is the Syrian Arabic Army, and then you have the SDF, the SNA. You have U.S. forces in the region. Again, I mean, the Golan is a whole situation down in the south. So you have a ton going on. You have Hezbollah fighting some over by the Lebanese side of Syria, or they have in the past. It's a huge, complex issue, and there's so many unknowns right now that me giving like absolute answers is a little disingenuous, I would say. Thank you, Jim, for your donation. I appreciate it, brother. Getting invaded by terrorists equals a civil war somehow. Yeah, it was a little bit more of a civil war earlier on in the conflict, and now it's like, yeah, you have like Chinese Uyghurs and Turkish mercenaries and Georgians and Chechens and basically everybody that the CIA has ever paid to go against somebody that they don't like. That's who's fighting in Syria right now. So yeah, it's kind of a mess. Not a lot of Syrians fighting the Syrian Arabic Army. We see what Turkey does, in my opinion, but always look for your input militarily. Yeah, I think that if the Turks are going to do anything, it's going to be against the YPG. So the Kurds, the Turks are there's a balance here, right? So the Turks are maintaining their relationship with the United States, maintaining their relationship with Russia, all while trying to militarily accomplish something in one of Russia's allied states, causing a lot of issues. It's not a good look. But I don't think Turkey is necessarily going to directly involve themselves against Russia and Syria, like Bashar, but more against the Kurds. And I don't think the U.S. is going to protect them. So, yeah. But I do think that the SAA will... there will at least be a big battle for Hama. I don't know if they'll be able to hold it, but they have in the past, and a lot of reinforcements have arrived now. So it's going to be difficult, I think, for HTS to actually accomplish that with Russian air support working heavily. We're seeing Su-25s doing close air support. We're seeing... oh, my camera went out again. I don't know why that keeps happening. We're seeing all that stuff happen, so I think it's going to be hard for them to do any significant any significant push on Hama that doesn't result in casualties to the point where they're not going to be able to hold it either way. Is basically where we're at. But again, I'm not a Syria expert, so just everything I say, huge tablespoon of salt. I knew Russian puppets were bald like you. Yeah, you got me, bro. Male pattern baldness is definitely means that I have some Russian backing. Man, you would think that, like, if you're going to try to make fun of me, you would actually just invest a little bit of time to make it good. Like, you call me a Russian puppet. Congratulations, you're the 800 billionth person to do that. You called me bald. Bro, you ain't saying shit to me that I don't say 2 inches in front of the mirror every morning to myself. So, welcome to the welcome to the shit. We're in it. But yeah, so good try. Whenever you're ready to come up with a new one, a funny one, you know, something that's actually a little catchy, I'll put it back up. Scott is not bald because he's a Rusky. He's bald because he's... Oh, God. That's actually super funny. Will Russia take Zaporozhye during the upcoming winter offensive? No, probably not. That's a lot of territory to cover. That's a ton of territory to and a huge city to capture in a very short amount of time. He's not Jewish. He has body image problems. How would I have body image problems? I'm jacked. I'm 6'4". Bro, if I had body issue problems, I fixed them by making my body exactly what I wanted it to be. What is this? I love the projection though, guys. It's awesome. Always the butter morons in chat. Oh, man. Will Russia take Kharkov? I believe so. I believe that they will. I don't know when, and I don't know if there's going to be a big battle for it. I'm not saying that there's going to be a massive offensive, but we already see the Russians. Here, I'll go over to the map. We already see the Russians making efforts to cross the Oskol here into the Kharkov region north of Kupiansk. Obviously, they're pushing into the Kharkov region down here, as well as the incursion that they already have. They did state that they are definitely going to make a buffer zone along this northern border, so expect that as well into the Sumy and Chernigov regions. However, how far they go, I'm not exactly sure. If I had to give my guess, I would just say the river eventually. The river just makes the most amount of sense. You put yourself in a position to put a lot of political pressure on Kiev at any given time, or you have a puppet in Kiev by the end of this. I think that that's how far the Russians have to go to consider any sort of victory. Don't take the bait, big dog. Why? Why? It's an hour into my live stream and I get to make fun of people? Why not, dude? Bro, you don't think I do this all day and not enjoy the trash talk, right? It's like my favorite thing. It's my all-time favorite thing. Why talk about men's looks like that? That's gay. Yeah, I mean, I talk about bodybuilding sometimes, and that's kind of it's on that edge, that periphery. It's that it's that weird area where if you if you go too far with it, it's definitely a little gay. What's going on with the Russian offensive on the Oskal to the Oskal west of Pishani? That is, are you talking about? Yeah, right here. It hasn't moved much. They're still up against the Oskal here, just trying to put pressure on this northern pocket, but no advances that we have so far since the last update, at least. Oy vey, Scott, stop denying your Jewish roots. Is Scott's Jewish roots an inside joke? Yes, because anytime I talk about anything, the like if I talk about Israel and Gaza, no matter what I say, I'm either anti-Semitic or I got the call and I'm I'm wearing my little hat or whatever. It's so so stupid, but I like to laugh about it. So now everybody calls me Jewish, I guess, even though I'm a 6'4", bald, white, blue-eyed German. But yeah, sure. All right, guys. I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me on the late stream. I appreciate it. All of you for coming in here. Please don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed. Go check out my Telegram, my Twitter, and my Patreon for more content. All of my content is free. Go check it out. Be on the lookout for new Patreon videos. Those will be coming soon, as well as I have a big podcast hopefully coming up next week. We're getting the date down. Some big, very, very, very big guests. I'm very excited. That announcement will probably be made at the beginning of next week, so be on the lookout for that. I'm very excited. It's sort of my Super Bowl, I guess. So take care, everybody. I will see you on the next one. Be safe, and I wish the best for you and yours. Have a good one. See you on the next one.